This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Wild Prognostications 2023, where Aaron, Joey, and I take guesses on what's to come this year.
Woo! Do you believe in noggin? 'Cause we're gonna nog about some ideas for the next 2 years. This is what a Joey sounds like.
Wait, no.
Yes. I don't know if anyone could hear what just happened, but
Siri,
Joey,
apologize for me.
yes, as was necessary. I will always love you. This is what an Aaron and a Whitney Houston and a vocoder sounds like. That's
And this is what an executive producer and chock full of nogs, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess, chock full of nogs.
full noggins. Lots of the nogs.
We already did house cleaning for the new year, Chinese New Year. You don't do cleaning while in Chinese New Year. So Jess,
Or the Lunar New Year, as some celebrate.
Lunar New Year.
That's
Apologies.
True,
Corrections
true.
Department.
Corrections Department.
We are here.
Jess, would you like to start us off on the first day of Nog Year?
Nog Year. The first day of Nog Year. Every year is the first day.
We're in person together. We should acknowledge that. The energy is going to be different.
Yeah.
If you're a longtime listener, it may be familiar from approximately 3 years ago. New listeners,
chaos.
This is a throwback.
Yeah. All throwback.
We have waited several weeks. We know we're late, but we wanted to wait for this special moment for Aaron, Joey, and myself to be together for, you guessed it, that first day of the first Frognog year. It's Wild Prognostications 2023. For those uninitiated, yes.
Yeah.
This is the segment where Aaron, Joey, and I take wild guesses on what's to come this year. Who knows what
Where Joey
will happen.
wins.
Right, where Joey absolutely nails it every single time.
I'm gonna blow it this year so hard.
Where Aaron guesses what he's afraid of.
Yes.
Where I will what I hope will come. And sometimes it pans out and sometimes it doesn't. What can I say? We will bring at least 2 to the table, maybe more. Maybe we'll workshop. We'll see where this takes us. But given his confidence, I think we have to start with Mr. Joey Kmire. Joey?
Lord. Laird. Aaron, Jessica.
Yes.
Dearest friends.
Bonjour.
I'd like to gather you here before my ring light to have
You
a
don't got a ring
discussion.
light.
I don't have a ring light. My tone looks horrible in this lighting. I'd like to talk about influencers.
Oh my.
I have this often happens with my prognostications where sometimes I think it's easier to predict things that are going away versus things that are coming, right? We will all have guesses on things that are coming, but sometimes it's easier to be like, oh, this isn't. It's getting a little long in the tooth.
I don't know what that means.
Old.
Yeah.
Like,
Long in the tooth?
When your gums recede up, your teeth are getting long.
I didn't know why that was it. That's helpful. That's quite the turnip phrase.
It's a turnip phrase.
Shout out to one Mr. Branch Strickland for his favorite joke in our house. Please proceed.
Who will not listen to this episode? He will not. We can say nice or horrible things about Branch Strickland. I think we're going to turn on influencers. I think influencers are even turning on influencers. I've seen a number of things in the past few months. There was a thing I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really know who Addison Rae is, but her makeup brand is not doing well. There's been some articles written about it late last year. It's no longer going to be carried in Sephora, which is, I think, probably a big deal if you're a makeup brand. That I've seen a lot of people talking about bad behaviors that are arising as a product of TikTok and Instagram with regards to recording other people, recording conversations, putting people in weird positions. I saw something earlier this week about a fitfluencer who was recording in the gym, and a guy sort of walked up, and this is the sort of consensus post hoc. She was like, he was trying to scam on me. What a creep. And like everyone else is like, that guy just looked like he was coming up and asking if you were using the machine, and then he walked away and said very few things to you. That's like what you do in the gym. And I just feel like we're at this point where we're like, do we need to like record it? I've seen conversations this month about like, I was talking with a friend and I didn't know that I was on TikTok live the entire time the conversation was happening. Like all of these sort of behaviors that are a product of everyone. There was a funny video earlier this month about a fitfluencer in the UK who was trying to record her fitness journey, and just like an old curmudgeonly like dude sits on a bench, and she like walked up to him and she's like, excuse me, you're in my live shot.
That British accent. Can we just
we
want to underline that?
And you have to see the hand motion.
Yeah.
She was like, he's like, you're a live shot? And she's like, yeah, I'm live streaming to my followers. And he's like, your followers? Are you Jesus? And she's like, no, it's about my fitness journey. He's like, oh, you're on a journey, are you? My accents, I'm not trying to go into it, and it's happening automatic.
Telling.
It is.
But like all of these behaviors surrounding it that people are sort of in like broad consensus are not cool, and absolutely a product of everyone feeling the need to record everything and present everything. I feel like maybe what we can workshop is like the edges of this to make it a tighter prediction.
Yes.
Right, where I just say the world turns on influencers.
Right, what are we looking for?
Yeah, what would be a
KPIs?
measurable version of this? Because I feel like whether it's like disappearance of influencer brands, or they're not making money, or there's a chance TikTok may not be here in the US at the end of the year. So
I wonder if there's like a digital ghost town phenomenon where like in cities with urban blight, and like just like what happens in the vacancy of a place that was once occupied by many peoples. We've seen this on Facebook, right? Where it's just like, oh, strange. You have to scroll back quite a bit to see a pretty regular amount of posting on the Facebooks. And it's just interesting to wonder about, is it going to be, are you thinking, Instagram and TikTok, and all of a sudden just like the number of active posts are going to go down? Is it that content will be produced less? Is it that people will be following less? And what will it look like to have that turn?
And to add to that, I wonder about who is going to be followed and why. Because like, I know it's a little bit of like, a Planner 101 question of like, what do we mean by influencer in this case? But like,
let's define it.
I can't help but think about like both what are the so-called talents of people that folks are no longer going to be interested in witnessing or might view less of, and then also is it going to be about like what is determined to be a usable skill that is then like worthy of more attention or worthy of more posting?
It sounds like a book called The Dots.
It does exist, and it's written by our very own Joey K. Meyer. Is it still? Where can you buy it? Can you get it on
Amazon? I think.
Yeah.
Pitch, plug.
It's true.
This is, I think maybe also what you're suggesting is, no, maybe it's not a matter of taking the form of a ghost town, and it's more a matter of shifting away from influencer, which has the attachments of the type of talent that we admire and revere, and instead a different type of talent will go up.
This was, I heard someone talking, and I'm trying to remember who it was, just to credit the idea because it's not my own, but it was this around this idea of the distinction between social networking and social media. And social media is about like outputting to broad audiences, right? And like these TikTok behaviors that we're talking about is like, you know, no one is thinking about like people they know. Social networking is about like being able to connect and keep up with people that you've actually met in your life, people you know or people you could know and then meet in real life, where social media is just like broadcast. And like maybe this is, to your point of like, who do we follow? Maybe it is returning to closer to what the original incarnation of Facebook was about social networking. That shifted around 2009, 10 when they started changing the way the news feed worked.
Oh, I remember that day. That was a day. I mean, the thing that you also touched on, which makes me think about it, is it's an idea that has just escaped me. It's literally completely evaporated from my mind.
Did you ever know about Path?
The train? Sure.
The Japanese social, or that's Line?
No, I think.
Path. I think you've mentioned this before.
I had been back in the 10s. Me and my family, a huge proponent of the social network Path, which was designed to be a pure expression of social networking where you could have only so many people. It's sort of like the close friends concept where you actually can't have that many people in your circle to encourage more, intimate sharing between closer friends and family. And I just think all the time, like, if just timing, this is just such a strong idea for right now that I think that could thrive right now, but maybe it just flew too close to the sun too early.
So my light bulb, you re-sparked my light bulb, which is that, and thank you. Oh my goodness.
Thank you, Jessica Edison.
Yes. Well, because there's like, there's one thing which is about using social media to preserve or reinforce social bonds that either currently exist or that you want to cultivate. But then there's this other thing, which more so goes back to this broadcasting, which is about, I think, it comes from a lot of different places. Sometimes there's like, I think about the journey from live journal to Facebook. It's like you want journaling to be open and to share your thoughts and just to like take what's in your world and put it out in the world. Then there's, and I'm super oversimplifying all three of these little things on this side of it, but there's how-tos, like how to do something, how to be more effective, how to lift better, how to DIY your house, like everything that came out of the hacking moment and all that. And then the third is about entertaining. Like it doesn't actually have anything that's intended to be tutelage. It's intended to just make you giggle, make you laugh. And there are people that are behind those things that are really effective. And I don't think that, in my mind, I'm curious about how those dials are going to change.
Yeah.
I think that they're like, I don't know if this ends up just being a different prognostication, but like I do expect the knob to be turned much more high when it comes to DIY or teaching type, or like using social media as a way to help people do something more efficiently or effectively. I feel like I'm going to be very annoyed by the rehacking moment. I think it's going to happen.
But the to that point, like that has been a lot of the conversation around generative AI, right? Of like the CNET had that it was brought up on Hard Fork a week or two ago that CNET was publishing articles that were in collaboration with ChatGPT-3, and they initially maybe weren't as public transparent about it, but have since. But like these how-to things are like important. Like, what is a compound interest, I think was the example they were using. It's like, yeah, that's helpful to know in more detail and from like a trusted source. And so if CNET has a version of that, but they have to pump out a bunch of those like how-to things. But the question of like, there's been this refrain. I think there was a New Yorker article written about it. We should know less about each other. Like, And they don't mean that in like relationships like ours where we're doing the show and we've known each other for years. It's like, the person listening to this maybe should know less about me, or that we should know less about random strangers in the world, right? Like there is that sort of parasocial dynamic where if you're consuming so much content from so many different people, that they are in some ways taking up some of your like relationship space. You know so much about them, you know their entire story. Like they're a pseudo relationship. It's not real. It's unidirectional. And so like in this, if there is sort of like some content reduction that does come in the coming year or coming years, then maybe there can be a return to people you actually know.
So what is that, if we're measuring, how will we look for that in 2023?
I wonder if there are metrics around like social exhaustion, and I keep on like my brain turns into a pretzel because on one hand it's like actually you want greater appetite for closer relationships. Like I don't know how that's tracked, but then on the flip side of that, is there a metric around feeling overly stretched about what you know about everyone and how much pressure you're under to feel as though you must engage with a lot of those secondary, I don't want to call them secondary, but all the depth of information that you can get about movie stars or podcast hosts, because I'm sure everybody is Googling us all the time in general.
I will, to close this nog so y'all can nog, I'll sort of give maybe 2 or 3 ways I think it might be able to show up. I think if there are metrics on reductions of follower or like following counts on some of these platforms, I think that would be a signal, right? Like signals that people are following fewer people, like reducing the number of people they follow on TikTok or I guess
like that would be a very active, like I'm running away, but certainly like it likes on posts.
Yeah. Yeah. If activity on these more broadcast oriented platforms reduces, potentially, maybe that would be a signal. I think if there's a migration in usage to platforms that are more interest based, like, so whether it's Mastodon or Discord or Reddit or platforms like, and there are a bunch of new ones coming out trying to usurp Twitter in the social conversation world. Like if there is migration towards this interest-based, where you know that those people are interested in a similar thing that you are interested in, and there's more specificity, I think that would be a signal away from, Discord. I mentioned Discord. And then, like, I guess if overall usage goes down, in the past we talked about like black, what do they call it? Like dark social media, where it's happening in private channels more and more. And post the 2016 election, there was an uptick in private social media where, whether through messages, Signal, Telegram, whatever it was like no one else is seeing these conversations. So maybe those are. I will say this anti-influencer thing has given me a little bit of an optimism. Like I've always been scared of the super sad true love story thing where everyone just like goes that the bad behaviors beget bad behaviors, and the fact that there is like seeming to start to be a pushback, I feel like is a little bit reaffirming that maybe we can control our like worst sides, maybe. I don't know.
I love that optimism. Does that mean that I should go to my pessimism?
You should.
Yes.
Well, you're going to have to let us know, Joey, or we'll add it in the show notes, what some of those, if there is a good starting point. So then later we can see what happened.
Yeah.
But yes, now, Aaron.
Okay. Now, yes.
No, two.
Flax.
Now,
barley. I'm sorry.
Now, yes, it's true. All of my progs are actually just rooted in my own anxieties, which, spoiler alert, are larger than the sun. But this one is actually perhaps a little bit lazy. I'm going to go ahead and just call it the way that I think it is. And it's inspired by an interview that Kevin Feige from the
Is that how you say his name?
That is how you say his name.
All right.
There you go.
I had
Feige.
I would have maybe said Feig.
Yeah, and I would love it if folks can check me on that. I'm doing this just based on YouTube video watchage. So if it's wrong, please
Trust
make me
the nerds.
smarter. Yeah. So he came out and he essentially is, quote, this is very, very, very dumbed down, but essentially was saying that folks will not be able to ever get tired of comic book movies. Like, they're just going to continue being great. And of course, the headline of this article is basically saying, yes, of course, the person who is most incented to want those things to keep happening would believe this. And this actually happened, I think, around the same week that, as we spoke about on the podcast, The Last of Us adaptation aired on HBO Max and became the second most viewed show in HBO's history, or debut in HBO's history, next to House of the Dragon.
Roman Thumb?
Fantastic. Recommend it to everyone. It is great TV end.
Is it scary?
It is, I'll say it is spooky-ooky. I'm going to give it that. It is spooky-ooky.
Like, can't watch after 9?
I would maybe have the lights on. Yeah. But it's not like, it's not an American Horror Story situation.
I don't have any benchmark, but that sounds scary.
Yeah, I've never watched an episode either. But it's definitely not horror. It is a drama with horror punctuations. And I think that I love it because it's very thoughtful about, it does what every good piece of art does, which is that it's not hitting you over the head with whatever those things are. It's using the pieces against each other, the drama, the horror, to create just a really delicious
It's a story
plot.
with zombies as opposed to a zombie story.
100%. And also, I mean, I'm just going to dive into this really quickly. It is a story about people. It is not a story about a pandemic. It is not a story really about zombies. It's a story about love and relationships between human beings on an individual and society level when so much gets pulled away.
I love love.
Love is something. And again, I will plug the official podcast, The Last of Us podcast. It's great. So he says all of this, the show comes out, which leads to my prognostication, which actually is that I think that we're on the cusp of, and we're going to see a rise in video game super franchises over the next few years. I think that there's definitely a conversation that's been coming up around how HBO got this right. Finally did a video game adaptation the way that it should be done. And I think we spoke a little bit about how much of a bet Universal has put into Nintendo's franchises, specifically with Mario, but then how that actually has an adjacency to Donkey Kong and a few other things that they are planting seeds for the Nintendo Cinematic Universe.
It's interesting you bring that up because I played like Mario and Rabbids game, whatever.
Yep.
That's not the name of it.
I think it is. I think you're right.
But it's interesting that there has been a merger that they happen in the same universe in the way that we would talk about sort of broader canonical stories. And it's like a tactical like turn-based tactical shooter game with like cartoon characters. But that idea of like building a unit, right? Like Iron Man and Thor and Spider-Man are all in the same universe. It makes it interesting. Like there are many stories to tell and you can have overlaps and intertwined moments and things like that is compelling.
And especially when you think about the success of sort of video game corporate expansion in like live events, and like you look at what Riot has done with going from owning more of the food chain from like development to publishing to competitive esports. Like it just makes so much sense then if you already have the canon, you already have, like, I think it's a perfect analogy to take it from what what has been done with like comic book universes. It's like if you have that IP, we talked about this, right? If you have the IP, like what if you just take that and run?
Yes, and to that end, I feel like there had been, I think, a tacit belief that video game creators, not just the developers, but the folks who create video games can only create in that medium, and that if you're going to translate it to another medium, you have to bring an expert in that medium to do so. And The Last of Us it's very logical. It's like, yes, have the guy who created the game, the creative director, help create the series. Like, put the person who did the thing in the role to make decisions.
Yes.
And that is something that I think by owning more of the pipeline, there's going to be a lot less concern about what the outcomes of that could be.
Okay, devil's advocate though.
Ooh, spooky.
What about the Halo franchise?
What
have we learned from what has happened with Halo? Because I don't know, it's mixed stuff, right?
Yes.
I didn't watch the show. I loved Halo, but I just didn't have. It was on Paramount Plus, right?
Yes,
I didn't have Paramount Plus, so I didn't watch it. Was it bad?
It wasn't good.
Got it.
It wasn't good. This is me, personal opinion, audience sample size of 1. But I think one of the things that is an issue that it ran into is that yes, there's lore and there's story and whatnot within Halo, and there is it always comes down to creators creating content like TV shows, series, movies, whatnot, and they believe that they know better than the fans. Mm-hmm. They think that they know, no, fans don't want the one that The Last of Us is disproving is if you've played the game, you don't want to just see the same story in a series. We do. Yeah. We want that, and we want you to go deeper in the places that are more interesting. Yeah. Add texture. Don't change canon. Don't throw it out the window. Mm-hmm. And also, genre makes a big difference. Halo has lore, but it's a first-person shooter. That's really what its experience was about, was playing that way and connecting socially around others who wanted to blow stuff up with you. Yeah. And so when you have an interesting IP like a Mario, which is so broad and so big and honestly so flat, but also crazy malleable, you can do interesting things with that. It becomes a Rorschach test for wherever we are as a culture, because you can overlay the mythology onto where we are now to get a good story out of it. Mm-hmm. And similarly, on the other side, you have things that are rooted in already really explicit stories. There's already a Horizon Zero Dawn series that I think has been greenlit by Amazon, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. And you know how I talk about that anytime we talk about a game. I think that if they do the same treatment from a creative perspective and from a fan service perspective that The Last of Us did, Horizon Zero Dawn is going to be just as compelling. It's going to be just as great because it's rooted in story. Mm-hmm. But Halo sat in the middle. Halo was just... And they didn't respect their audience, and they didn't have people that were sort of honoring the work for what the work already was, in my opinion. Again, I am HO. But
can you put some bounds for the sake of the prognog around how you're thinking of the super franchises? Is it about multimedia format, or is it agglomeration into shared universe that Red Dead Redemption and Borderlands are actually in the same world, but just different times? Or
good, yes. So in my estimation, the way that I'm thinking about it is more the former than the latter. Okay. And I'm imagining one of the things that I'm curious to keep an eye on from a measurement perspective is the sort of what the licensing landscape will look like for some of these franchises right now that are coming out and blowing up. So at the end of the day, so much of the revenue for a lot of the media companies is going to come from licensable materials. Mm-hmm. How do you put physical objects out in the world that create other revenue streams beyond just the cost centers that are creating and distributing the content? And so subscriber bases, et cetera. But there's a question to me about, are we going to see more deals across different retailers? And also, are we going to see greater investment in some of those deals that come off of some of these franchises that are going to be launching next year? And I also wonder about, in addition to just thinking about the revenue opportunities there separately, where will we start to see these franchises show up across media formats? Will we start to see, yes, adaptations from game to series, but where will we start to see extensions of franchises across platforms? Where will we see more, where will we start to see smaller games coming out that are probably bigger than mobile, but are substantive and still can sort of help close the loop on casual gaming as well? I'm curious about that.
I think like a good way to measure it might just be cross-platform, like interesting examples of cross-media extensions, right? So like even Critical Role had its first 2 seasons, and then they did the animate, right? So it's a Dungeons and Dragons based game, but people are improving and role playing and dice rolling in that, and it's very, very long, right? Like
it's like 80
hundreds of
episodes,
hours. I mean, more than that.
Many
like
hours.
hundreds of hours of things, and they distilled part of the first series of Critical Role of them playing the game into an Amazon like 10 episode cartoon arc. So that feels like it's a good example where it's like taking a thing that people love and putting it in a new medium and seeing how it plays. And now you're talking about like Last of Us, game going to movie. Can movie go to game successfully? Can book go to like improv role playing? Like
actually, you're totally right. I mean, even we're seeing, and it's kind of in theory, it's tried and true. Like Kindred with Octavia Butler, from Octavia Butler, being now a Hulu series that's starting, but the 1619 Project, like the fact that that's like an academic piece of work that's now a Hulu series that's coming out in a couple of weeks. I think that's a really, really good point, that when we see lots of different forms of media crossing more rapidly, and then also seeing, I wonder, like in many of the examples that we're talking about, the creators actually being central to the work of it leaping across and having creative authority over how it shows up in those spaces, even though that may not be their native like zone, I think is going to be a big one. And yeah. There was one last thing too, and this is more so an accelerant engine that I am curious about, which is just practically, we're at a moment where video games have really good intergenerational appeal.
Yeah.
It is very easy to hit mom and dad with a game that they played when they were kids, and there's a version for their kids that is worth playing.
Smart.
Yeah, Emerson likes Mario because
Classic.
I got that game because I didn't want to play Elden Ring anymore. I was like, I can't play this. I can't play this in 2-hour increments and like successfully do any. I was far. I was like toward the end, and I was just like, this is too much. Yep. And so I got that. I texted you over Christmas break, and you were talking about Bayonetta, and I was like, should I get it? But I was like, I don't know. And I saw this game, and I got it, and she's like, loves Mario. And so I'm like, okay, great. She's excited for the Mario movie. We can both go, even if it's not good, like whatever. I'm fine with it. But the intergenerational point, I think, is interesting.
Video games keeping families together since right now.
Yeah. So we'll see. But
so we're going to track cross-media extensioning in interesting cases.
Yes.
This seems like we are on a roll. I'm excited to see what it. Yeah, I feel good. I feel like this is. We're gonna see some good stuff.
You're stalling. Nog us, Jessica.
The question is, if I throw all of the options at you at once.
The answer is yes.
All right. Remember that time that I did that thing where I was like, we could talk about a bunch of different topics, and then you picked one in the moment?
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of feeling like that about my nogs, where these were 5 thoughts that crossed my mind, and let's talk about 2 of them.
Ooh, what if we cloud atlas? Me, Aaron, Jess 2.
Right.
Aaron, Joey.
Exactly. Or as I would describe it, the Settlers of Catan placement strategy.
Oh, I see. Yes, indeed. I track.
You get 2 settlements.
Snake draft.
Exactly.
For the fantasy sports people.
Wow, these are so many different words I've never heard of.
Same.
I'm going to read aloud these 5 topics, and then each of you should pick one, and then that's what we can talk about. Okay. With no context. This time, chickens as the new unicorn.
Wow. Yep.
Affection for vermin. Outrageous coats. Separately, extreme weather clothing. and premium air.
Extreme weather clothing sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm kind of anti-vermin right now after having had a mouse situation recently.
Oh, we don't want to talk about the mouse situation. Great. Let's talk about extreme weather clothing. So in the last year, the number of news blasts about all of the crazy climate happenings are unavoidable.
Is something happening?
With our climate?
Did I miss something?
Wait.
Oh, no.
way.
Bomb cyclone. Got it.
Oh, cool. Right. Yes, exactly.
Atmospheric river. Got it.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. And I was talking with my brother Ben, of course, about how like he was describing
Name
the
of your
need-
podcast.
True. The need for he was looking for basically like rain pants, like something, the rain jackets galore, but like what about rain pants for when you need to prevent
My pants
water,
pants.
water,
Pants.
Yeah.
water from covering, any part of you. And I think this just the idea that was a hard thing to find struck me. And knowing now that, there are experimentations with like headgear for, clearing up the air if you live in a fire zone. It just seemed like there could be so many products, so much retail opportunity in the most, capitalistic of senses to help gear people up for this crazy world that is here to stay.
Yeah.
I mean, I am. This sounds like a prognog that's inspired by the way that I probably would have like worded it.
Yeah, I was channeling Aaron when I thought about this.
I'm scared of crisis fashion.
Yes.
Crisis fashion. I
Crisis
love
fashion
that.
is a nice handle for it because I think, and I think that I didn't have a really good appreciation for this until I moved to California. I think, and it's a little bit counterintuitive. You would think that given that in New York, we're outside all the time, we spend so much time exposed to the elements that I would almost expect this to sort of germinate here. However, as soon as you said the wildfires, I was thinking about just the past number of years of California's weather, the atmospheric rivers, the wildfires, all the different things that even though you're in a car in your home, you genuinely have a sense of concern about your literal environment. There are days when you make sure that you check, that I check the AQI index that's like an ATM machine.
Yeah.
I check the AQI and I'm like, I don't know that I'm going outside today. I think I'm going to actually change the AC filters just to be sure. And so the idea that this sort of thing could actually grow out of a state that has all the different climates at once with, snowy climates up in the mountains, all the way to like beaches and dealing with ocean, etc. I think that there is an increasing reality on the day-to-day basis, and I'm curious about what all of our California listeners think too, the conversation is about we need to adapt to this world. Like, it's kind of like we've already fucked this up. And we have given Earth a fever, and we are going to get burned off. So we need things to be able to deal with these crazy swings of, having a month of rain and dealing with the mudslides, et cetera, that come with it, and just make sure that we can, like, exist in this alien world that we've created.
Yeah, and we're not going to evolve fast enough to adapt our own bodies to it very quickly. So what if we just wear stuff?
Exactly.
There's like an interesting silver line. Right, here I am, just silver lining Joey.
Who are you, me?
Compared to catastrophizing Aaron. The thing about this type of fashion, if we want to introduce fashion into this conversation of clothing for extreme weather, is that function is much more prominent in these types of things than it is in our conversations that people are sort of having around fast fashion, right? Like there is like a very conflicted, there is even like the fast fashion paradox that people talk about and things like that, where it's like, I know it's bad and I don't want to do it, but then I will go to Shein or whatever and buy something and it's terrible and I know it's terrible and I get it and I'm not happy with it, but then I need a new shirt. And And so, but these things, right, like are typically nicer because they have to serve a function. If you get like a cheap pair of your pants to protect you from the rain, and then they are just wet pants on top of your wet pants, then it doesn't do the job. And so there's like there's a functionality that's introduced, and if you can get that form and function combined in this case, it makes it potentially gives people the opportunity to be like, okay, I won't buy the cheap thing. I'll get the one nicer thing, and I'll have one pair of pants that I will wear for years or whatever. And then there's like a potential behavioral shift that can be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, I think another element of that function could also be like the desire to be sustainable, and those tailwinds, like that already makes a lot of sense. But even on the conversation of form, with the resurgence of like bigger bigger pants, like stealthier, bigger. Well, we're not even talking about outrageous coats yet, but like this sort of creeps over into outrageous coats. But like the amount of play in our current fashion moment with structure and shape, and not always having to have everything be skin tight. There's more room to make statements with this type of thing too. Like I could imagine a ton of creativity, not just, in sort of this functional space, but also in making, extreme weather statements.
When you talk about statements, it takes me to the reality that, high fashion, I think, plays with this they've played with what does our environment and our clothing need to do to deal with us being and doing this to the planet for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And it's the one thing that I find exciting about the runway. Like I've dipped out of that for years, but I used to be really, really into it. And it's more so that clothing is, especially with really, really amazing high-end designers, is really about asking philosophical questions and using clothing as a way to explore them.
Yep.
And it takes me to a question about time horizon. Mm-hmm. Like, how long will it take to start to see this explored more explicitly? And in what form do we think it's going to take?
This is a great question. In fact, it is making me wonder if this is the first time that we create a wild prognostications timer, or like something that allows, because I feel good about this idea, and it is to me feeling like a matter of when. Mm-hmm. And could we just, let it run and see, do we see seedlings this year? Do we think it's actually going to peak though in 2 to 3, given the way fashion and that timing can turn things out?
I think so. To the conversation about form and function, and like fundamentally, I would expect these things to generally be more expensive. And so the interesting component of it is, does something like this break the traditional fashion cycle where starts in youth, works its way up ages types of things? Like, does this trend begin in like more middle-aged people that are able to be established and purchase things that, right, like a pair of nice pants like
love this concept of pants I really do.
Might
the
be
hunter boots trajectory.
It might be like $150, right?
Yeah.
And like because it's a rubberized pants that are waterproof or whatever, like it's going to be more expensive because it's not a traditional material. One, the supply will be lower, and then two, like you have a higher expectation because now you're treating it like a functional good, and so you're oriented towards failure, right? You're not thinking about failure with your normal pants as long as they stay in pant form. Like a seam doesn't break or they don't rip, right?
Well, there's an interesting question in my mind too about whether this is going to show up as a truly standalone, carved out space of new forms and structures, or if this is really going to manifest in well, there's two ways that it kind of manifests now already. One of them is just in taking existing technology and distributing it, changing the cycle a little bit, such that, for example, you have warm weather clothing seasons lasting longer. Like literally about 10 to 15 years ago, you would have your summer runs would be, you have warm weather clothing starting in May, and then you start turning for back to school and doing fall wear. We've already seen that there are more warm weather options creeping up a little bit earlier and a little bit later in what's getting shipped to stores. And then the second thing is that there's a lot of functional clothing that already exists. And I think about things like heat tech or just all sorts of things that are
Gore-Tex.
in the performance
Tights.
space. Yeah,
Yes.
tights. Like there's so many. Gore-Tex is a really great example where it's like already been branded, already has an indication for being able to do something.
Waterproofing.
And then everybody else says, how can you license this technology to use it in other applications and maybe not have to educate the populace on how to integrate it or wear it or use it in their daily lives.
Yes. So I think my hunch is that you can look in two places. The first is just the sheer attraction and draw to produce products like that, maybe that you can create certifications for, or you can name and brand this thing that is capable of
Material science.
Exactly. That type of thing. But I think the second is quite directly like marketing, being on this theme and using sort of that extremeness, using that like hurricane tunnel as a test to show, the performance, because it takes on new meaning where, maybe you aren't, you're not putting to test your clothes in a day-to-day labor context. You're putting it to test the performance, to test in an atmospheric river or in an adjacent city to a wildfire.
Yeah, I will say I've already seen a signal and cynicism around this. I saw like someone post screen caps from a TikTok person being like, these trends are going to go off in 2023 with Gen Z. And then the next picture was like Arc'teryx jackets.
Yep.
And the person was like, kill me now. But like,
You're right.
It is like, it speaks to this, right?
Yep.
Like an Arc'teryx is like higher end, like outdoor performance clothing. And if Arc'teryx jackets, as an example, go off in the way that maybe Canada Goose jackets went off years ago for like staying warm and fashionable, maybe it is a signal of that.
Or maybe it needs to start deeply uncool.
Yeah.
That is maybe a place to be. Not just uncool because it's so posh and out of reach, but because it is so highly functional.
Well, that's the one thing that I'm very curious about. This is the locus of motivation. Is the motivation going to come from a place of being stylish? And how do you, of course, bridge that idea of being stylish with being functionally effective? Which, of course, that's not a difficult thing. Like that is the job of every clothing company. But there's this other thing of like, I don't foresee a future in which any marketer would like basically say, make sure you have your world-ending jacket, or make sure you have your world-ending pants.
Yeah.
Like that don't catch on fire or like take out in the rain. And also I think because it comes from that place of just like everybody wants to buy more when they're happy. So don't bring up existential threats. And so I guess I'm curious about, I'm really excited to watch this and find how the story ultimately gets told and whether or not that broader context ever comes to the forefront in an explicit way. Because it could. I mean, I think about, literally bought a sweater last week that is made of recycled sea plastic and crushed oysters. Because and they totally got me. It's like from a fisherman company that makes traditional sweaters, and I was like, that's cool, I'll get it. And I got it, and it's amazing. It is so comfortable.
Drop the bomb. What's the brand name?
The company is called the Long Wharf Company, and I believe, Seawell might be the brand beneath it, but I think it's Seawell underneath the Long Wharf Company. But this is kind of late to the game because it was, like 10 years ago that not G Series, that's the watch. We'll remember, but Pharrell partnered with G-Star Denim. That's what it was, to create recycled pants denim out of recycled sea plastic. Pants. And so this idea that like, okay, there's a problem and we are actually going to be a part of the problem by creating, by creating more waste, by creating like materials that are reusable, that are actually going to be doing something, isn't old but when I think about how that story gets told about something that's not as practical as like the materials being used, or something that's more about how this protects you and protects you from the environment when you're not on Kilimanjaro or you're not going to aquatic depths or something like that. That storytelling is going to have to be very creative to be clear, compelling, and still motivating and not doomsday prediction. I love it.
Remember the last time you melted?
Yeah.
Buy a reflective jacket. Yes. Jackets in the summer, you say. Don't worry, folks. It keeps you cool.
Ooh. We should be like keeping an eye on cars. I'm thinking about measurement, but like when you said reflection, I'm thinking about sun visors for cars, like sunscreens. Like, yes, this is more so about like don't have a black car in sunny spaces.
Yeah.
But I think I'm curious about how cars, which have to move a lot slower, and how secondary market pieces start to adapt cars to the changing environment. How do tires, for example, and like coming to market tires, not like, the long vision innovation tires from Michelin.
You live in Phoenix, dum-dum.
Yeah.
Get our tires.
Yes. Don't let your car melt into the ground. Use air.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's spelled AYRE like a tire.
Right.
In Britain, that is spelled with a TYRE.
Right.
This man.
I'm
brands.
making connections.
This man.
I
brands.
think that makes sense. Just generally extreme weather retail. Let's see what we can find coming up next on Wild Prognostications.
All right, Jess. Concertinas. We're going to do speed progs on the back end.
Exactly.
Woo.
Aaron?
Oh.
Wait,
Which
no,
one?
you're not doing a second
I know, but
prog?
you picked the first, so he's got to pick the second.
Okay, speed round.
Oh, no, you have to pick from her list.
Right. Chickens is the new unicorns.
Okay,
That's where
remember
I was.
that time? Remember that time that I said that unicorns were out, and I nogged that we would have a new unicorn.
I nogged. I love that.
replacement?
I love that.
Yes. To nog.
Well, the problem with that nog, that was flog nog.
It was a flood nog.
because I didn't know what it would be. But I
You
had
said
this
llamas would
idea.
be the new unicorns? Is that what it was?
I threw something out. I was like, is it llamas? Is it alpacas? We didn't see a ton. We saw a little bit of an uptick in llamas.
Emerson has both a llama and an alpaca stuffed animal. Maybe you were pseudo right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw one to a baby last week.
I wasn't incredibly right. But I had this thought, because of the expansion, the sort of the boom in chicken ownership and sort of the reverence of the chicken, if we would see sort of new depictions of chickens as sort of a cute symbol of joy, play, etc. And, I feel like historically, you think of the rubber chicken. What is a more terrifying depiction of a chicken than in stretched form from head to feet, designed for chucking in a elementary school gym context?
Pre-factory farm in its context, so it's not like even the example of the depiction of it that we'd have today. There's a whole lot less breast meat and
Right, and so can you and this horrid sort of red and yellow
still has its feathers on
contraption.
in its rubber chicken mode.
Very strange. But that's the thing. So the idea of sort of reimagining the chicken in reverence, like a beautiful Jurassic, creature that can also be friend and not just food. And I think the things that I would be looking for are toys depicting chickens or of chickens, like a stuffed animal chickens, but like the beautiful kind or the cute kind. It just felt like, what could be more different than a fantastical beast of a unicorn than those in our midst who today we are learning to love in a whole new light, the underestimated, esteemed chicken.
I am willing to hold space and yes and the hell out of this. Sure. Why not? There is no reason. I keep on thinking about the chicken from Rio, if anyone saw that animated movie with Johnny Depp years ago. And also the chicken from, what's the chicken from that's got the big eyes and...
Moana?
Yeah, the chicken from Poi Poi?
Pock Pock? Poi Poi?
Pock maybe?
I
Hold on,
can't
looking it
remember.
up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey.
Hey, wow. Pok Pok. I
That
really thought it was
means
Pok
chicken.
Pok is a chicken restaurant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and poi is Hawaiian food. I got lost in my head. But yeah, like there have been moments in the recent past where a chicken, like from a place, was seen as a memorizable, noteworthy thing to enjoy for children. But it's the idea of like the chicken being the next like mermaid, unicorn,
Yes!
fantastical.
Yeah.
I am very. I don't know that I see it happen, but I can't. But I will stand behind you on this journey to keep an eye out for it.
Definitely don't see it
You know
happening.
what? That is why though. That is what I want. Like, is it because the chicken is too?
Unicorns are made up so you can make them into whatever you want. That you can sort of like assign like an attitude and a vibe, like like certain like kittens or cats, or when they like come in and out of like the most prominent cute thing, like we've interacted with them and they have personalities. Chickens are not very smart. They're not even like the most redeeming birds.
You don't even. Okay, this is where I think it is. The key is that we just haven't had as much exposure to chickens, but the more that we understand them and we spend time with them, and by we, I mean those fancy people in upstate New York who have bought them, like, I think there is a new empathy for the chicken and maybe an appreciation for the cuteness of the chicken. And okay, I know, perhaps it's wishful thinking, but totally in the way that like cats are overplayed. We need something else to take the space of memes.
But I think that here's the thing is like the reason why I think llamas and alpacas had an uptick in sentiment, but nothing is going to reach unicorns because unicorns aren't real. No, I think that's why.
Not really
and so I don't
what
think
it means. You don't think
okay,
more like,
so then maybe you're right. I think
unicorn
chickens
is
may
just a
have their
proxy.
day in the sun of like an elevated Q score, but I don't think they're going to be like someone's throwing a chicken themed birthday party for their kids.
That's what I want to see. I like that you want to make it happen. I'm just positing. Look, this is I recognize a truly wild prognostication.
Yes. Hot temperature, hot,
very toasty.
But if I'm right.
You know what I'd like to see too is like, I think about like a lot of the fantastical things like the Norwal moment. There is like, there's perennial cuteness and I would say that's like the kitten. I would say like, then there's mermaids and unicorns that I think.
Fantastical cuteness.
And it does require not being real, and it also requires lots of color. That is a necessity, and I think that there was like a little trick with the alpaca and llama moment where they did a lot of like scarves on alpacas to add color, because otherwise it's like, well, it's just like a thing. And then there's this other thing which is smaller, which is like a toy or a product doesn't bring the whole creature into the foreground, but it becomes like a very noteworthy thing that you see everywhere, like that damn giraffe. What was the
Jeffrey the giraffe?
Not Jeffrey the giraffe toy that every baby had in the past few years, and it's got like big eyes and it calms babies down and it's good for teething. You know what? We'll put it in the show
I
notes.
don't.
Sophie?
Sophie, that's the giraffe. So Sophie was.
I don't know her.
Yeah, Sophie, because it even like the legs were designed to allow babies to be able to put their fingers through them and hold on to Sophie and all that. And like, but giraffes, I don't think giraffes had a moment as a result of Sophie being big.
You're right.
So I could see a world. This is why anything's possible. I could see this chicken existing somewhere in that span.
We need a chicken egg laying game.
Yes.
A la Hungry Hungry Hippos.
Yes.
To give chickens the opportunity to peck away at our hearts.
Yeah. And if you throw in like a rainbow colored head thing.
Cockerel? No, that's just just a rooster.
Oh,
or a cockle maybe is the thing.
Like a wattle?
A plume?
Like a plume?
The comb?
The comb. That's it.
The fleshy red outgrowth on top of a chicken's head.
If there were rainbow combs on a chicken, it would take off like wildfire.
Imagine the headpieces.
Yeah, it would be those parties. All right, Joey, we're throwing a party for
and
Marcel.
I love it because I hate it. That's what I will say. Like, I love it, but I don't like it.
Yeah. I look forward to being on this journey with you,
All right,
Jess. This will
Aaron,
be fun.
concertina us back.
Oh my goodness, checkers are going to be a huge hit this year.
Come on.
Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one.
Seriously?
You don't like this? Come on.
I don't. I
Checkers is not a good game.
Checkers is an easy
Checkers
game.
is actually an okay game.
I find checkers to be an okay game. It's easy to pick up. It's simple. I think I'm going to draft off of our conversation about social networks earlier and people wanting to get closer together. I think it's going to happen both across families and across friends. I think that checkers will have a moment because it's easy to get people around and get to that place. Yeah. Watch me hold my beer, bro.
Yeah, I'm looking at checkers set, the high design checkers sets in the same
is not
way.
a good game.
Have you
Great
seen?
game. Great game.
Where
It's
Most
so
games end in
complicated.
draws.
That is true. It's a great game. Now, I will say there is a plug
Wait,
for a
am I
different game.
thinking of backgammon?
Backgammon is better for sure, and there's a better version. I think I consider this between chess and checkers as Santorini, and I give my friend Justin a shout out for introducing this to me, which is it's more complicated than checkers for sure, and it definitely requires the sort of like foresight that you need in chess to be good. But it's designed for kids. It's designed, well, I guess checkers is designed for kids too, but like it is a delightful board game. There's a New York version as well. I highly recommend it to anyone who like wants to play with their nieces and nephews, but then also wants to play with your siblings, because you will both be like, this is very hard. Why? This is not easy. How's this made for kids? So I'm just saying, high-end checkers sales. We'll keep an eye out.
Checkers
discussions
media
on
reps.
TikTok. Exactly. We'll see the new film done around checkers.
Yeah,
this
the new
year.
franchise that's going to go cross-platform.
Yes.
Is there a Queen's Gambit spin-off?
That's what I'm expecting. That's what I'm
related.
expecting.
Yep, Black and Red Lotus on HBO this year.
Yes, not to mention it'll show up in fashion. Lots of checker fashion. Let's have stripes. Let's have checkers. It'll be a thing.
Well, what's interesting is it'll bring me nicely into my prognostication, which is the resurgence of tic-tac-toe. It's not.
Have you played Ultimate Tic-Tac-Toe? Sidebar.
I have not.
The Ultimate Tic-Tac-Toe is a game that
Called
makes tic-tac-toe
Connect
fun. No, it is, instead of tic-tac-toe, which is not fun to play, you can play 9 games of tic-tac-toe simultaneously, where you create a board that has...
And you can only place one on any board at any time.
You're trying to win the all like across the boards, and so inside there are 3 games across, 3 games down, and wherever you place your piece, that is the macro board that you send the other player to. So if I put an O in the center spot of the bottom left game, then I send my opponent to the center board of the macro tic-tac-toe.
I am enjoying this meta tic-tac-toe.
So
this is kind of interesting.
I have not explained it well, but
we got it.
You're like, no.
It's like, ultimate overstatement.
Anyway, I really encourage you to check it out. Sorry, that's not what your nog was.
I had a few. I was like, oh, can I make a prediction about Twitter? It's like no one cares. There seems to be like rising sentiment around the death of woke, right? Both on the left and right, actually, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't know what my perspective on that is yet. And then what I sort of landed on was, I think there's going to be a pretty seismic shift in dating. Wherever we are in the pandemic coming this year, like, not trying to make a prediction about that. That's a race to the bottom, making predictions about this pandemic. There are like increasing tensions and pressures around dating, the dissatisfaction with dating apps. There's conversations about infladating, like
What?
the impact of inflation on the frequency of dating behaviors where you're going on many dates and that's too expensive. So there's sort of feels like a swing against that sort of polyamory moment and open relationships thing. There's like conversational pressure towards monogamy from those things. There's, you know, the straights are not getting along on the two sides of the genders.
Two of the genders.
Two of the genders for the straights. And it feels like that is coming out of like the intense pressure into filter bubbles based on gender dynamics, where the conversations that are happening on either side of those in those gender bubbles is like very different, and they're not getting along anymore. And so I'm like, I don't know what is the thing that is going to happen with dating, but it feels like everybody's upset. And so it feels like something is going to happen.
And could that something be a concept that I learned from my Abu, my 100-year-old grandmother, the resurgence of the tea dance?
Oh, I love a tea dance. Love a good tea dance. You guys don't know what well, explain. Okay.
Well,
I don't know what it is. I was like, are you joking or are you?
No. Fire Island tea dance has been happening for years. Like it used to happen 4 times a day. Now it's 2 times a day. But yes, you explain the traditional tea dance, and I'll explain how it's just become a happy hour that happens for like 6 hours in the afternoon.
Well, I think it was just a socializing context that I learned about from my grandmother, but I also learned just now is a very prominent component to the gay community in New York City, especially over the last 50 years or 50 years ago. But I don't know much about it, so I should pass this over to you. But the things that sounded appealing about it were, one, it's an otherwise productive socializing moment, no matter what. So it's not time wasted to have done this, but also anything that could be on the earlier side that is a non-drinking, like non-alcoholic drinking context. Also,
I've seen trends about sober dating.
Yeah,
too.
it seems like the vibe. So Aaron, fill in the gaps because I don't know much.
I mean, short version is that when, long story short, homophobia, Fire Island becomes a huge mecca for gay life in the 60s, 70s. That begins in earnest. Specifically in the Pines and the Grove. But there was a tea dance that started at the Blue Whale, what's currently called the Blue Whale. And the thought is basically get a bunch of single people together in the daytime to hang, and make sure that you have this place where you have all these individual houses, and it's a very house-oriented community. How can you create a space that brings everybody together with a DJ and to hang out? Those tea dances have never been non-alcoholic.
Yeah.
However, the euphemism also was to try to make it a space where, not to actually be in any way refined, but to get other people not to come. It's a code, and especially with where homosexuality in culture was in the 50s, with the Mattachine Society, 60s, 70s, etc., codes were necessary to create safety. So the tea dance, midday hang, get together, have some drinks with a bunch of strangers, and then the rest of your evening can go whence and wherest it wilt.
This is fascinating. I'm learning it also has origins in homophobic prohibitionist law.
Yeah, you couldn't get a number of gays together in the same space around alcohol, period. And so tea dances were a way to just circumvent that. Call it a tea dance, and then you just have quote-unquote tea. Yeah. That's not a connection, by the way, to the colloquial, what's the tea, which wasn't a gay term. That is not from the gay community.
Actually where the Arnold Palmer was invented.
Yes. But I do want to actually make that one clear. But the idea that that singles night can be non-alcoholic singles day or afternoon is an interesting way of an interesting thing to keep an eye out for to see if that one comes true.
Yeah. I mean, I think you, even in sort of your correction to me about sort of the gender dynamic point that I made of folks, there's so much opening and fluidity that has happened in conversations around sexuality and gender. And so the question of where maybe dating is going okay and people aren't upset versus where they are, I can like see it's not going great in a lot of places. I can see either gay friends or gay figures in public spaces talking about unhappiness around it. I can see straight figures. And so maybe there are still pockets where, you know, like I know in certain like kink communities, it seems that there is better communication and better conversation that seems to be happening as like from the outside. People are like, yeah, no, we're good. Like you stay over there, we're good. But it feels like there's going to be a push towards something different. And maybe it is just like this becomes a year of experimentation with new methods, approaches, whatever. But like people are not happy. They're not meeting folks. Land of the Giants is doing a conversation around the dating apps right now in one of their series where they've done like Apple, Google, Facebook, and now they're doing like Match Inc. And like the dissection of that. I think the choice of that as being like your next big company to tackle is probably a product of people's current unhappiness with it and why they would select that versus others. And so, you know, we could test it in like conversation trends, like Google Trends of like top articles around dating or whatever. But maybe if we see interesting things popping up where people are testing new methods, like festivals around singles meeting each other or things like that, or an uptick in things like the tea dance would be super interesting coming out of the gay community into new communities, broader communities, things like that.
And greater conversation, I think, as well, just around like the vibe around human interaction.
Yeah.
Because like with all those dynamics that are in a petri dish, you also have really practical things about like it's scary getting together.
Yeah.
Like there's the emotional anxiety or the social anxiety that comes with it. There's the physical anxiety of like, oh, am I going to get sick? And then when you talk about, kink communities, queer communities, and the conversations around consent, as well as just like, in many cases, our communities have had to speak up to each other quickly because your health was on the line. And so there's just, you have to leap over that fence if you are in any way getting intimate whatsoever.
Yeah.
And now everybody is forced to have these very, very difficult conversations that require a lot of vulnerability and a lot of honesty and transparency with more people. And I think that if we watch how people continue to get together or not get together outside of their their existing groups, that might also be sort of like a secondary indicator of what's going on within relationships and people coming together to create bonds of
love.
The bonds of love. Thank
Bonds
you.
of love.
Thank you. Did we do it? Did we
think so.
Kill it and crush it and
full of
all
nog.
of it?
So-
I had a delicious nog.
So
Delicious nog, sir.
Good
to
nog.
read nog with some prognostications.
Indeed.
Joey's first nog was the turning against influencers. Aaron's first nog was on the cusp of a video game super franchise explosion. My first nog, Jess, was the surge. Will be the surge of extreme weather clothing. And then my second, chickens. Aaron's second, checkers. And Joey's second doesn't rhyme with that, but it's the
Love.
some dating thing.
And I'm not making my noise.
We'll have to be keeping a lookout with all of these tickers, measurements, and trackers to make sure that we are
Thinking about long arcs.
thinking about the yearly arc, the long arc. What are we going to see?
We should, if we're making a little timeline, maybe we should look at our past nogs to see how our past nogs, if they were on different arcs as well.
A mapping of the oh wow, you know I'm going to get into this.
Map nog.
Noodle
Map nog away.
Map nog.
noodle on our nogs.
Noodling?
And
How did this come to
Nog
be?
noodles? Is that what this paragraph is going to look like?
Prognostication, prognog, nog. That's the origin? Okay.
Yeah, nog on your noodles.
This has been so...
Interesting.
It's been something.
It's been an hour and a half because we're in the same room as each other.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
This
Made
is
it
a
this
dangerous
far.
game.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you at the end of the year. And if you have the time, at some point throughout the year also.
Yeah. Okay, ciao.
Bye.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by the color green. Ooh, I'm green. You didn't give me enough time. I couldn't come up with one.
As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and Viridian coat, Jess Vander.
Wow. Wow.
Thanks, Joey. Thanks, Aaron.
We'd also like to thank sound engineer and the comb to my chicken, Alex Contel.
That was good.
We'd like to thank programming coordinator and cockerel of my heart, Les Jacobs.
Oh, that's so sweet. And you know what? The production help from our own super franchise of Sarah Gilbert, Nora Mestridge. You guys are just everything. All of it. Thank you.
And as always, thanks, Len.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Alon.
Special thanks
To the color green, I am so sorry for what I just did to you, more so than really thanking you. You know?
Verdant.
Very verdant.
Special thanks to getting together
Yeah, this has
with
been
people
fun.
and friends and being in the same room. And we just had our company, everybody together the week of recording this, and it was really nice.
It was good. My cuppeth runneth over. Why not throw another TH in there? Yeah. To being together, you brought up the Critical Role series, and I have to plug because Legend of Vox Machina, which is the animated series, season 2 just came out last week.
Did it? I didn't know.
Yes. So they're releasing 3 episodes at a time, so it's a good time. It's really, really good. And then the other thing, special thanks to Invincible, which is another animated show on Amazon that is coming back, if not this week, then next, based on a comic book. I am super excited. Thank you for making sure that had a season 2 because I freaking love it. And I now have literally 900 pages of comic books that I am reading just after the first season. I'm obsessed. So, huzzah, it's back.
Huzzah!
Do you have any special thanks?
Thanks, you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, man.
Thank you. Thanks, Pokemon. You gotta catch them all.
Gotta catch 'em all.
Pokemon.
Is that it?
I think we did it.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
I really... I don't want to go back. This
To
is
catch them is my real test.
To train them is my cause.
This is the only time that I've not sung on this show because I don't know shit about Pokemon. I did not. I was not a Pokemon kid. I don't know.
What?
I know. I don't hate it.
Cridanon.
I missed it. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Love
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Longest episode.
Longest episode ever recorded. This is, well.
Hold on, let me do one clap. That wasn't a good one.